Memorial Day weekend typically kicks off the summer travel season for Americans. But this year, the number of people going through airport security is down more than 90% compared to the year before. For those who do get on a plane, the screening process will look very different. The Transportation Security Administration is adding extra measures to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. The changes will be implemented at airports nationwide by mid-June. In a statement, the agency said TSA is committed to making prudent changes to our screening processes to limit physical contact and increase physical distance as much as possible. Charles Marino is the National and Homeland Security Advisor for X Labs. He is also a former advisor at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and he joins me now. Chuck, thanks very much for being with us. What are some of the changes people are going to notice the next time they go to the airport?
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for having me. Yeah, some of the first things that they're going to see are what the CDC is recommending for all citizens of this country, and that is social distancing and the wearing of a mask. Those will be enforced at airports around the country, as you said, around mid-June, and there will be markings on the floor, and masks will be required as you go through security check-in and move about the airport. The other important changes that you're going to see is, as you indicated, is they want to decrease the level of interaction, physical interaction between TSA officers and passengers. So you're going to see things change, like passengers will be required to hold on to their boarding passes and driver's licenses when they check in. They will scan those themselves. They will just hold them up and show them to the TSA officer without the TSA officer ever taking possession of those. The other request that they're making is that any food items be packed separately in a plastic bag. Food items are one of the leading reasons why there's secondary bag checks in this country. So if you can pack it separately and really give the TSA officers the ability to see into this plastic bag without having to dig through a person's luggage, all the better. Really, this coincides with just packing smartly, where you know what's allowed. The rules really haven't changed, with the exception of sanitizers, which you're allowed to have 12 ounces of, but all the other rules have stayed the same. So as long as you're abiding by the rules, you should have no problems. However, if a prohibited item is flagged within your bag, it will be incumbent on the passenger to actually open up their luggage and unpack everything.
Well, Chuck, I know you mentioned passengers having now to hold on to their boarding passes, to their driver's licenses, the identification that they show the TSA officer, but those officers are still going to potentially be in close contact with thousands of people on a daily basis. So what are they doing to protect themselves?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I've pointed out early on. You know, to date, TSA has had 600 people infected with COVID-19. And they've unfortunately had 6 deaths. So this is very important, where you could see the impacts of this pandemic on our overall national security and the security at airports. TSA has done an excellent job with their workforce, making sure that they're protected with personal protection equipment, and also abiding by the CDC recommendations, in terms of keeping themselves as healthy as possible. And also that includes reporting, any symptoms prior to coming into work, and also alerting any supervisors should they become ill during a shift. So overall, they have done a very good job. They know how important it is, just like all other public safety workforces, to remain as healthy as possible during this pandemic. So one of the things that you're seeing is everything that's being recommended to the passengers at the airports are also being followed by the employees of TSA.
Well, are all of these new measures going to slow down the security process?
I really don't see that happening unless the American public doesn't, comply as they're being asked. Typically around these types of situations, we see a great deal of participation and attention to the rules by the American public. You know, the country is slowly beginning to open, although I don't think we will quite return to normal anytime soon. But during this new normal, as passengers start to increase their level of risk, and as the numbers of COVID-19 go down and level off, I think you're going to see an increase of citizens wanting to get out and travel as they used to. It may not happen as quickly, but it will happen. So as long as there's great participation between these passengers, I don't see a significant slowdown during the processes.
Well, we know that checking people for fever has been a big part of public health protocols in places like China and in Europe. Where does the U.S. stand on that?
I think you will see the use of thermal to detect elevated body temperature at all U.S. airports. I really do. I'm not sure if it will be rolled out by mid-June, but you will subsequently see this used. In terms of speaking about TSA employee safety, thermal detection for elevated body temperature is really the safest way and minimizes any need for interaction between the officers and passengers. Thermal detection's been used for years. It's gained approval during COVID-19 by the FDA for emergency use, and it's highly reliable as a screening device. It can detect passengers from 6 feet out to 20 feet out. So there's really no required interaction. You can build in a good secondary screening if somebody does detect for an elevated body temperature above 100.4, which is the CDC recommended number, and then you can go from there. But also in terms of using existing technology such as the fever device, which has gained use widely across the country with great success, fever also offers a pre-check program where passengers, if they opt into it, almost like a TSA pre-check, can take a COVID-19 test at home 2 hours prior to reporting to the airport, can take their body temperature. And there's really great integration possibilities here between not just the airline's check-in process, but also the TSA pre-check program. So as we start to evolve and understand that there are some great technologies in existence and being used across all different sectors in this country to get them back open, and having kept some open during the crisis as essential services, I think you'll see TSA turn to a device like this, which goes beyond just screening at the actual facility, but also has a lot of screening and clearance capabilities prior to a passenger even arriving to the airport.
Yeah, Chuck, I mean, can you talk a little about that? So your company, X Labs, has created new technology that would allow people to get their temperature checked without coming into physical contact with anyone else. I do think a lot of folks might be wondering, well, how exactly is that going to work? Where does that information go? What's the sort of mechanism to get that information to the proper authorities so I can go board my plane?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as you know, we've been talking a lot during this pandemic about privacy and the use of new technologies. Fever is really nothing more than a mitigation technology. And that is, you want to prevent somebody from coming into a venue or an airport if they are detected for having an elevated body temperature. We know that it's only one of the symptoms. We know that 25% of those that are infected are asymptomatic. We understand that. But if you do a good combination of detection for fever, questions that should be asked in terms of recent travel, recent contact, we think that this is a really good way to go. This is not a technology that is used to ensure that people are socially distancing. It's not keeping real-time observation of people as they move about the airport. As I said, this is purely one of the layers in the safety and security apparatus that can detect and mitigate and potentially stop the spread for the one symptom, consistent symptom of COVID that we're seeing.
Chuck, more broadly, do you expect these changes to airport security to be temporary or long-term?
I guess that all depends on a vaccine, right? We know that they are pushing, the government's pushing full speed ahead to develop a vaccine. However, we know the typical time frame that a vaccine takes to develop and test. So I would say that it's dependent on that. I think we can count on these procedures being around for quite some time until we know everything that we need to know about how this spreads, how long it stays on surfaces. Every day it seems like we're hearing something new. So I think out of an abundance of caution, and the last thing we want to do is go back to where we were. We now have states that are very in a controlled manner reopening, and we certainly don't want to take steps backwards and have to close things down again. So nobody wants to be responsible for an outbreak of COVID in their community, be it a large sports venue, concert venue, or an airport. These are significant numbers that could actually set back a community if there were an outbreak. So I think you're going to see these around out of an abundance of caution for quite some time. And I think that's the right way to go.
All right, Chuck Marino for us. Chuck, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Elaine.